Hey friends, welcome to the podcast. This is the 10 Laws with East Forest podcast, and I am said Mr. East Forest. Thanks for joining us. This week we have a wonderful conversation with Justin Wren. You might know him as the Big Pygmy. You might know him as a MMA fighter or as someone who has started Fight for the Forgotten, an amazing group that has helped the Batwa Pygmies in Uganda with all sorts of things that he'll talk about in this podcast. But man, he is essentially an amazing soul, an amazing human being, and a very generous storyteller. So I want to thank him for being so vulnerable and open in this podcast and sharing so much and with such an open heart. I mean, man, what a lovable guy. I just got to know him, but I feel like we're friends. And one of the reasons is because the declaration that he'll make to say, he'll text me and say, well, because we're friends now. And I'm like, I guess, yes, we are. That's how it works. We decide we are. So I'm honored, frankly. And I really, really enjoyed this conversation. And I think you will too. I know you will. So I don't want to give away everything he gets into. So stay tuned for that and check out everything that he's up to, particularly Fight for the Forgotten, but I'll have some links down there to everything about his world, and I'm sure you will check it out. I just want to say thank you, too, for everyone who's been tuning in to the A&Qs, the Ask Me Anything type events we've been doing on Instagram on Sundays at 12 p.m. Eastern. I'll do it again on Sundays for now. We're kind of doing that because I enjoy it, but it's a great way to get in direct contact with you guys, and I'm sort of working on putting together in my head how to create a kind of taking that East Forest Council thing we have been doing around some of the virtual ceremonies and maybe making it into something more regular, perhaps long-term, as a way of creating community, keeping each other accountable, that sort of thing. So I'm continuing to think about that. But thank you for subscribing to this podcast and giving it a review. You can give it a 5-star review right while I'm talking now, and doing that helps us increase our ratings on iTunes Podcast, which helps me get the kind of guests that you want to hear. So thanks for subscribing and reviewing. And I also just want to say thank you for buying merch on the website. Those of you who have been, it's been a wonderful way to support East Forest with the perfume oils or the Ram Dass prints or vinyl records. We've got some bundles there, and they're all different ways for you to hopefully enjoy life more and make it a little richer. I'm not really someone who likes to make more stuff for the world. So if I am going to offer you stuff, I want to then sell something for you to put your stuff in. No, that's a George Carlin reference. I really just want it to hopefully enrich your life, and everything is a bit of a tool in a way. I've always thought of the music as a kind of tool, a tool to help us dive in. And lastly, we are working on some more dates around the May 1st Salt Lake City date. We're looking into where we can perform and be COVID compliant and do all of our COVID compliant stuff. So Adam's working on that, but we'll have more on that soon. And I think that's it. I've just been really busy working on a lot of music on the back end, the possible albums, finishing up mastering, some collaborations, a single. It's a lot of stuff, so I'm really excited to start rolling it out in 2021 among these other offerings, which is just, find the way that works for you, my friends. So if you're not on the mailing list, go over to eastforest.org and sign up, and then you'll be sure to know about, if we're playing in your town or if there's a new thing that we're offering to you guys first. I'll do my best to let you know. Okay. Here we are in the new year, and let's get into some beautiful stories about transformation and service with the wonderful Justin Wren. Thank you for joining me. It's an honor to meet you, and I've been diving into your world a bit, and it's quite a world. I often ask people, for the sake of the listeners, to, it's like, hey, can you give us a little bit of background on who you are? But I actually feel bad saying that to you because now that I've listened to a lot of your background, there's some serious stories there that I don't, people say things like that to me. And I'm like, I've answered this so many times on other podcasts. So at the same time, you're free to tell us those beautiful, beautiful experiences and stories. You have such a rich history. But I also don't want to burden you to feel like we have to repeat all that stuff that you've talked about before, because there's so much to get into. So if we get into anything that feels like it needs some background, let's just tell any of the background you feel we need to.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Good.
Thank you.
And so you've gone through a lot of adversity in your life and a lot of change, and you've kind of made this journey into service as being a big part of your life. And I've always thought to myself, I've noticed that when you go through an evolution of consciousness and spiritual journey, just evolution of the self and self-development, it often turns into a form of service. And as Ram Dass, he would say, like, yeah, it's the only game in town. Once you really wake up, what else is there to do? You help others, you're helping yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, like, if you look back on that kind of shift in your life, what were some of the things that served as the catalyst to really like snap you into that awareness?
Wow. Well, for me, man, I had this sober vision, which is pretty nuts for me to explain to people. I know a lot of your community has experimented or is even serious about ceremonies and psychedelics and all that, which is so... It's an incredible tool, I think, that a lot are able to use and to heal from depression, PTSD, childhood trauma, all that stuff. But I was in active addiction from 17 to 23, really heavily, heavy.
And what were you into at that young age?
Yeah, it was oxy for the most part. But
at 17?
Well, I had a surgery. I was a wrestler, right? So I would have an injury and... I actually have this where I was wrestling at 18 was oxy. So, but my first time to drink, I could go back to there. That was at 17. I didn't allow myself to have a drop of alcohol until I won the national championship in wrestling.
Even though you just dove in head first.
Yeah. Even though I went to Catholic school and that's what we all did. I just
where was this? Sorry,
this was in Dallas, Fort Worth. Yeah.
Okay.
So in Dallas, Fort Worth, I grew up there. I grew up getting very, very extremely heavily bullied from like 3rd to 8th grade. And so from that, I was diagnosed with depression at an early age, clinical depression at 13 years old. And I threw myself at the sport of wrestling because I wanted to be a fighter. After a big bullying moment in my life, I was like, you know what? And I found the UFC VHS tapes. So VHS, UFC tape or fight number 2, UFC 2 through 10 or 11, something like that. I spent all my allowance. I was a country kid in Fort Worth, Texas. And instead of buying a BB gun that I was going to shoot some of the rats in the barn with, I ended up buying the UFC because when I found that and looked at it, I was like, these guys don't get bullied. That's what first drew me to it. And then also, I love the human chess match of it. I've always loved sport and competition, but this one was so it's you and somebody else. And on the football field, I came from a team that they just blamed everybody else. There was the blame game on the team.
Yeah, there's not much gear either with UFC. It's just like it's just two dudes or two ladies. You go at it.
Absolutely. And for me, it goes back to the first Olympic sport, which they debate was either the marathon or wrestling, Greco-Roman wrestling. And to have Greco-Roman wrestling against maybe sumo wrestling or taekwondo versus jiu-jitsu or boxing versus Muay Thai kickboxing from Thailand. And I just fell in love with the sport. Actually, when my dad found my VHS tapes, I grew up in a real conservative home. And whenever he found the VHS tapes under my bed, he thought it was a stack of porn, but it was just UFC.
It was porn. It was just, anti-bullying porn.
Yeah. There you go. And so I fell in love with the sport. I loved it. But anyways, it also, I put my identity in that, my significance in that, my value was all hanging in the balance of win or lose. And from that, I had an excuse to use. It was either win and celebrate or it was lose and erase all the pain, or, the memory of all the sacrifice of 6 months preparing for one fight or this or that. But for just to go into my usage a little bit, I don't know if I've actually shared this on a podcast, but my first time drinking after the national championship, we had my national championship trophy, which was like a cup, a big cup, golden one that, anyways, we started putting vodka in and drinking from. And it was parents and coaches and staff at the school and the priest and a bunch of the kids. And they cut me off at 30 shots, but
30,
but really they were all laughing because I actually only had 15 real shots, and then the rest was from a vodka bottle full of water. And so, but I did have 15 right from the beginning. And so looking back at my past, I can see like, man, there was something in me that I was trying to, I didn't just like the feeling. I felt like I needed it. And I think that the addict's brain is like it's dumbed down to dopamine and just wanting to feel good. But really, I think at least my mind, my brain tries to prioritize it for even survival. Like once I had it, I thought, I need this. Like, where have you been all my life? I have to have more of you. And I would sacrifice things that just weren't rational. I remember at, 23 years old, I got a voicemail from my best friend, and there's probably 60 voicemails, but his was 8 minutes long, and I got about 8 seconds through it because I was basically a missing person for about 8 weeks. I never did this 8, 8, and 8. I don't know what that means, but I was a missing person for about 8 weeks. And
at what age?
This was 23 years old. So my childhood dream had become a reality.
You're a pro fighter.
Pro fighter. I was on the Ultimate Fighter TV show. I'd wrestled in Moscow representing the United States.
Making some money, I presume.
At kickboxing in Amsterdam, I was the main event at the Hard Rock in Las Vegas, right? Making money. It's my dream. I'm the youngest guy at the highest level. Everyone is picking me to be, when I was wrestling and I was the national champion, they were saying I was going to be the next Olympian, maybe a medalist, maybe a gold medalist. My coaches were Olympic gold medalists. So when you spot it, you got it, I guess. So these guys had it and they saw it in me. Same thing in fighting, guys thinking I was going to be the UFC heavyweight champion. And, I kind of threw all that away for a long time. I'm still fighting. I'm back at it now. I'm getting ready for a comeback fight, but at that age, I was a missing person for 8 weeks, and I got kicked off my fight team. I was suicidal, depressed, and my best friend left me a voicemail saying, I can't believe you missed my wedding. I can't believe my best man didn't show up.
Yeah, that you knew about, I'm sure.
That I knew about, but I was just gone.
You were in such a hole.
Yeah, I don't even...
What's your memory of that time? Do you have
completely blurry? Like it was hazy memories of being on a plane from I don't know where, but there was some Facebook pictures of me at an appearance in Madison Square Gardens, New York City, Vegas, LA, and Denver. And then the rest of the time I was holed up in a drug house in Summit County, close to like Breckenridge and Keystone and Dillon and all that up there. But I was
doing heroin or
no, not heroin, but oxy
pills?
And lots of pills, but anything I could find, to be honest. It'd be a lot of cocaine, a lot of pills, so Xanax and oxy. And for me, I don't use like anyone else uses that I've been around. Like a pot smoker around me is like, oh my gosh, I've never seen anyone that can smoke so much, and it's not even fun around you.
Wow, I'm just glad you didn't cross paths with fentanyl, or drugs that weren't what they said they were. Like a lot of that is now.
Yeah, well, I've got a story for you on that potentially.
So you lost 8 weeks.
Ago.
Yeah, and
lost 8 weeks.
Your buddies, like, where are you?
Yeah,
I'm heartbroken.
For me, that was one of my lowest lows. Not the lowest. Actually, this year is probably the lowest, but it's become the best. The second half, but first half was definitely the hardest, like for many of us. But in that moment, I thought, wow, this is a guy that's only ever loved me. We've never had an argument. He supported my journey. I've supported his. He got me into fighting professionally. And he has only believed in me, only cheered for me, only brought positive to my life. And yet I left this dark cloud over his beautiful wedding day. And I'm a hurt person that can only hurt people, right? Hurt people. And this is a guy I only wanted to love. And so it was a very devastating, rude awakening. And yeah, so I started a journey from there, and about 11 months later, I ended up in the rainforest. There, I'll back up and kind of set up how I ended up with the Pygmy people, the hunter-gatherer tribe. But I just started small. I heard this quote. I think it's Aristotle. It might be Socrates, but it said, "No act of kindness, no matter how small, ever goes wasted." And there was these guys that fought for me in the depths of addiction. In my pain. My addiction comes from a lot of childhood trauma and from bullying too, for sure. That's some of my biggest childhood trauma, but some other things as well. Some sexual abuse growing up and some other things. And so it was really hard. But whenever I found helping people, it started to help me. And whenever I had my head on a swivel, now I try to wake up and tell myself three things. I am compassionate, I am ambitious, and I am resilient. And I want to live to love with my life. I want to fight for people. I want to put love and compassion in action. And I want to defeat hate with love. Like that's what I exist to do. That's why I breathe. And that's why I'm so grateful for the breath in my lungs today. And the beating heart in my chest is like, man, I'm just supposed to love people and love everybody. And I just heard that for the first time from Ram Dass. Never even heard of Ram Dass until about, I don't know, 2 months ago.
How did you hear about him?
Yeah, I was with Aubrey Marcus, and I was invited in by him. Actually, I called him, said, I need this. And I just got out of rehab this year. And I said, Aubrey, I thought I had this thing nicked. I thought I was pretty good for the last 10 years. And this thing came, and it came with a vengeance, and it almost took my life, and I almost took my own. And I told him, I need something. I need tribe. I had the tribe in Congo and in Uganda, the Pygmies who I live with. A lot of health things have kept me from being there. And just more strategically, being a mouthpiece here mobilizes funds and support to keep the mission and vision going there. So I've started to have to know my role isn't always in the trenches, actually digging the wells or starting farms, which I don't know how to farm. I'm a fighter, right? I'm not a trained well driller. I'm a fighter, but at the same time, like we've been able to start some really cool stuff that's happened there. And so anyways, hearing Ram Dass and starting even before we started this podcast, I had a little 30-minute meditation and time of prayer and listening to your stuff. And it was just really powerful. The I am loving awareness, the miracle story he had, and then also love everybody. And that's just what I want to do. I want to love everybody always, even difficult people, because it's easy to love the people that love you.
Hard to do, simple to understand.
Yeah, hard to do.
Yeah.
It sounds good. Sounds easy, but it's really hard to put into practice. So yeah, man, I guess I want to get to this real quick vision. I think you'll dig it. I started small, I said, where it was like no act of kindness ever goes wasted. Just start small. So it was at a at-risk youth center in Denver, Colorado. I actually got kicked off my fight team. And these are guys that used to be on my wall as a kid at 13 years old.
Because you were absent and an addict, I'm assuming?
Yeah, because they could show up for me when I needed it. Hit or miss there too. But whenever it came to them sacrificing and being there for me, and then when it was time for me to be there for them, I was nowhere to be found. I would, in my own training camp, I would try to be healthy, do the right things that I did to be a national champion in wrestling and be a undefeated MMA fighter at the time. But I would start my breakfast up with some egg whites. I'd have some steel cut oats, some blueberries, some agave nectar. It sounds all good. I have a smoothie, my Vitamix, and I'm putting all the greens in there, and didn't drink it for taste, but for fuel, right? And it never really tasted that good, but it made me feel good. But then I would start up my vaporizer, and I would grab a glass of whiskey or vodka, and I would wash down, a few pills of Oxy before I would go train.
Wait, so you have like the power trainer healthy breakfast, and then you grab some Oxy and whiskey at the same time? Like, why bother with there's some part of you that had this very dualistic line of thought going on there.
Yeah, I wanted to be at my best. But
that's what doesn't make sense, because you have to be, to do what you do and have done, it takes such incredible discipline.
Yeah, it does.
But then there's some part of you that is clearly choosing.
Yes, I was choosing it, but in the cycle of addiction, it actually shares through brain science that an addict starts to lose the power of choice. It's like once you take the drug takes you. And it's that one is too many, but 1,000's not enough. And so there'd be times that I would be very disciplined. I could get away from it 4 weeks before a fight, 8 weeks before a fight, 12 weeks before a fight. I guess I should have reversed that. 12 weeks, and then all of a sudden it's 8 weeks, and it's 4 weeks, then I'm using the day before a fight.
Yeah, I
I'm
know.
ready.
I've had things like that in my life. Yeah.
Yeah. And so once I would use, I think if I don't slaughter the cycle of addiction, it's like once I have that first use, there is almost like a physical allergy that would take place in my body to where then it's like I go on a spree. And then I'm running and gunning. I'm on the spree until I'm either passed out or cashed out, broke as a joke, or passed out in my own vomit, or just hit rock bottom. And then once rock bottom was there, then you normally emerge pretty much remorseful, like super, super sorry, and not just to everybody else, but to yourself, right?
Yeah, regretful.
And I'd make a firm resolution, in such shame and regretful. And now I have this firm resolution: I'm never going to do this again. I'm promising myself, I'm promising God, I'm promising my family, I'm promising my team. If you hooked me up to a lie detector, I guarantee, just like other addicts that are in the stage, like I would have passed.
It's genuine. You really do want to stop.
I really, really do. But then all of a sudden you get in this state of like being restful or restless and irritable and discontented. And that word discontent to me, and discontented, I didn't know there was a real difference, but discontent is you're uncomfortable. Or maybe let's say I got a drink here. I'm drinking some kombucha. I'm thirsty. Right? That's discontent. But discontented, that means there's not enough water in the whole world to quench this thirst. And so once that kind of stage overtakes an addict, then it's, you get in this mental obsession of like, I got to find it. This is the fix. And your brain, I think they say it literally prioritizes it for survival, like the hunting gatherer mind. Like, this is what I have to survive. Right. And so that's where I would be. I would be sucked down into that deep, dark pit of addiction. And when I finally broke free from that at 23, that's whenever I started at the at-risk youth shelter, then the Denver rescue mission. And then I was at the I became an official volunteer at the Children's Hospital for Denver, and I would be, pushing the kids around in the wheelchairs, and I would be back there with them, holding their hand. As I remember this little girl named Kennedy, we called her Princess Warrior, and she had bone cancer, and she's cancer-free now. Thank goodness, thank God. But I was able to hold her hand right by her mom and dad as she was getting the injection to be put to sleep, and that started to add to my life. But I didn't really have, I guess, a ton of direction. I was just like, okay, I stopped fighting. I know that that's dangerous for me right now because just the environment, and then just how I handle it. Winning, I want to celebrate. Going back to that national championship, when I win, I just want to we call them reset weekends or reset days. I just need a quick reset. I just need to use real quick, and then I'll get right back on the horse and I'll start training again. But then mine never could stop like everybody else. Once I'd start, I'd just be off on another spree until I had nothing left. And so anyways, but I was getting further and further away from that. And for me, like, the closer you get to the light, the further away you get from the dark. And so, and I know that we learn so much from the darkness, but I might've been running from that. And then I don't know, man, I said a prayer one day, and I wasn't a praying guy at all. But I was really hungry or eager to hear something. I needed guidance. I needed direction.
An invitation.
Yes, it was an invitation to purpose. I think that was calling my soul, my spirit, like just, beckoning me over. And I didn't know what to do, what to say, but I just said something simple. I said, God, what do you want me to do with my life? And when I did that, all I know is I had a vision. It was the most, and I had mushrooms maybe 2-3 times in my life, and that's it. Before that, and it was never, the first time I did mushrooms, I went glow in the dark putt-putt at Colorado.
Yeah, you're partying probably.
Yeah, partying, drinking and mushrooms, and I got nothing out of it except for some laughs and giggles and a little bit of anxiety. But
and a few holes in one, maybe.
I did. I think 18. And so, I all of a sudden said that prayer, and bro, all I can say is I was taken in a vision, and I was there. I might not have been physically there, but my awareness was there 100%. And I saw myself in a rainforest, and I was walking down this footpath. The footpath was barely wider than my feet, and I was walking through this thick, lush rainforest. I was pushing these vines and thickets out of the way so I could keep going forward. And I didn't know where I was going, but I heard drumming. I heard this really distinct, beautiful drumming. And I kept walking, and I knew I was getting closer to something, and I heard singing. And it was this very unique, tribal, like yodeling of sorts. And then I come into a clearing. And when I came into the clearing, I saw these twig and leaf huts. They were about 5 foot tall and covered with thick, big leaves like I've never seen before. And I meet this guy. I don't say hi. We don't acknowledge each other, but I observe him. And the first thing I see is his ribs. He's starving and he's coughing. I know that he's thirsty, hungry, poor, sick, oppressed, and enslaved. I just knew these things. I was flooded with this knowledge, and he looked like a skeleton with skin on. And I came out of this vision seeing these people, and I started to cry, and I felt like they were forgotten. That was the one word I got, like forgotten. They identified as that. They felt forgotten. They felt devalued, overlooked, oppressed, like all these things, but forgotten by God and forgotten by people. Like they weren't seen as the rest of us. And I sobbed. I wept, and I've never cried like that ever since or before. Definitely before. I've become more in tune with my emotions and okay with crying since. But I don't know, a grandma-sized cookie little thing of like tears, bigger than a silver dollar. I just have never cried a little puddle of tears before, and I wept for these people. I wrote down on a piece of paper, forgotten at the top, and then underneath it, thirsty, hungry, poor, sick, oppressed, enslaved. I just knew it about them. But then I felt nuts. I sat there for a little bit, and I was like, what was that? It was the most...
Were you alone?
Yeah. I was in the bottom of a basement, and I was just...
Classic.
Yeah. I was just... I don't know. I was just... it was actually in a like old like 1800s library that no one was in. And I had gone in there and had some time for myself, and I just... was looking to hear something, and I never really meditated before. I'd done a lot of visualization drills. I lived at the Olympic Training Center, sports psychologists. They would walk me through that all the time, and feel the thrill of victory. They'd turn on music, they'd cover your eyes, and you'd see yourself shaking. What color singlet or uniform are you wearing on the wrestling mat? What's your opponent wearing? What coaches are behind you? See yourself shaking hands. What's your first tie up? What's your first setup for your takedown? What takedown do you get and you win? And even something in that, my sports psychologist, I was just talking with someone the other day, and it's like my sports psychologist always did positive visualization. That's it. But the Olympic gold medalist, those guys, they knew something special. They would do negative visualization. They would do worst case scenario.
Really?
Yeah, they'd do worst case scenario. What happens whenever you get taken down? We would start with positive. We would end with positive. But at some point, they were going to take you. They were going to take you into the deep waters. Because what are you going to do when you get there? Are you going to sink or are you going to swim? Are you going to dig deep? Or are you going to give up? Hey, instead of, you have the perfect match, which you want that. And maybe you tune it in more towards actual competition day to your flawless victory. Right. But up until preparation, like you got to know these guys are coming for you. What are you going to do if you get down? What if you get put on your back? Are you going to fight off of it, or are you going to get pinned? Same thing in a fight. Like my last fight was pretty much the most flawless performance I've had, and it happened exactly the way that I told people, my coaches, my training partners, even a second mom and dad to me that are like spiritual parents, that are my executive director, my nonprofit, and the operations manager. Got out of the float tank, and I did 2 sessions. First one I was working it out. Second one I got it, and I was like, this is exactly what I'm going to do. Went in there, did it to a T. Everyone was like blown away. So I mean, I'm a big believer in visualization, but those Olympic gold medalists would take you and be like, okay, are you going to, you're on your back, get off. This is everything you worked for. Are you going to let him take it?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you going to come from behind? Now you're down 6-0. What are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to come back? There's only a minute left. Can you rack up 7 points in only a minute? Can you put him on his back? Can you pin him? So I think there's something good in that. I mean, the Stoics would say premeditatio malorum, which is like premeditating the worst, like almost like a shipwreck. Is if you hit something in the waters, you want a perfect, sail across the the world, but your sails are going to get tattered. There's going to be obstacles. There's going to be lightning. There's going to be huge waves. Like that's life. Don't complain about it.
You can't control the storms or the seas.
Right.
You can pick the direction you want to go.
Yeah.
I always feel like that's how it is when you're guiding a psychedelic journey of people. It's like, look, I'll put my hand on the wheel of this ship, but I don't control the weather and the storms that may come and go. But we need a captain. So you're playing the role of like, okay, I'll keep this boat going.
Yeah, well, I love that. Well, back on that vision real quick, the one that I actually had sober, like I didn't even like try to conjure anything up.
Yeah, you were in the jungle.
To go in the visualization, like I wasn't like
spontaneous.
Yeah, it just happened. I don't know why, but it did. And I do know why now, but then I didn't. And I come out of that and I think I'm nuts. Like, I'm like, I can't ever tell anybody this. Who am I going to tell that's going to believe me? Who am I going to tell that's not going to want to, like, what's that? Whenever you commit somebody to like an asylum or something, or like get someone's brain checked. But 3 days later, I finally shared it with somebody, as fate would have it, I guess. I met a guy named Caleb, and Caleb had been friends with Bear Grylls. He helped him develop some survival stuff in Scotland. He wrote this cool book. He lived with a tribe in Vanuatu who invented bungee jumping. They would tie vines around their ankles, build these big platforms, and they would jump off as a rite of passage for the boys or for the men. And it would be, if you don't hit your head on the ground, you're a coward. Your vine was too short. If you hit your head on the ground and you die, you were cursed. But if you hit your head and you survive, just barely touch it, on the soil, then your yam harvest will be blessed for life for your family and stuff. And so he's telling these wild stories. He lived with the Maasai tribe that hunts lions, and he helped them in humanitarian and missionary efforts. And so I'm just like, whoa, who is this guy? And so I finally tell him the vision. I'm like, I'm never going to see this guy again, I don't think. And this is my one shot to tell somebody. And if he thinks I'm crazy, it's all right. And if he thinks I'm crazy, then I got a problem, like, because he's a wild man. So I tell him the vision. And at the end of it, he goes, Justin, I know who they are. And I say, what? And he goes, those are the Mbuti Pygmy people. They live in the Congo Basin rainforest across 8 to 9 African nations. And I was like, well, the Pygmy people do not, the Mbuti are just in Congo. But I was like, who? And he said, they're in the Congo Basin rainforest. And I'm like, where? And he tells me across 8 or 9 African nations. And he said that he had been there a year before, but he already had a plane ticket to go in 3.5 weeks from now. And he said that the day before I met him, his team, they were doing a scout trip to see how they could help him. He said their team all canceled, that the rebel groups took over the airport, that the U.S. State Department said no American for any reason should go into the Congo whatsoever. He said his wife asked him to cancel his trip unless he got a sign that he was supposed to go. And so he said, Justin, if you got a vision, if you go, I'll go. And then I was like, whoa, that floored me. But then he told me that people were being beheaded in the streets and all this stuff. And I'm like, whoa, I don't know if I want to
stick out. Yeah.
Yeah. We're definitely going to stick out, especially me being a vanilla gorilla over there. I just, I look unique here. Everyone stares when I walk around. So I got a big old head, like 3 times the size of a normal person's. And so, yeah, I was like, I don't know about this. And I just remember Caleb go, you really need to think about this. You need to pray about this. Like you'll never know unless you go. And that right there got me. Like, I was like, whoa, he's right. Like, I'll always wonder. I'll always question myself. I'll always be like, what was that vision about? And if I don't go, I'll never know. And what coulda, shoulda happened, what could have been, And what was that about? I'll never know. And so we ended up going, and we brought a buddy of mine named Colin, and Caleb, Colin, and I. We take 5 or 6 planes. We get to Uganda.
Mm-hmm.
There's no flights into Congo. We have to find a pilot brave enough to take us, just us 3 and him. And then we are landing on one runway that we landed on in Congo, like monkeys are jumping off. The next one, we're literally circling it, and they're having to clear it with 30, 40 people, clearing the grass with machetes. That's not mowed lawn.
Were you going just off a wing and a prayer from this vision, or did you start to now have okay, and then we're going to do this thing, or you really didn't know why you were still going?
Still didn't really fully know why, but
clearly had a strong urge to go.
Yeah, I mean, when I looked into their story, it broke my heart more and more, and I was drawn closer and closer to these people because of their immense amount of suffering, but then their incredible culture. I kind of just wanted to meet them and know them because they seem so amazing and wonderful. And the people of the forest, right? The protectors of the forest, the people that don't take any more than what they need. And just how they lived in community. And I didn't really have that, I might get pats on the back because I fight on TV or people taking pictures of me in the grocery store, something weird, but I didn't have a true tribe. Right. But I don't think I actually knew that going there. I just was I better go because I'm not going to know. And so we get there and we land on a runway where they just mowed it with machetes, and we get in a truck. We go 4, 6, 8 hours. I forget that same drive. I still do. And sometimes it's 4 hours. Sometimes it's 24. Sometimes it's 48, depending on the conditions of the road. And depending on, the weather, the mud, and rebels. So anyways, we get out there, then we get on a motorcycle. We go through the rainforest on motorcycles. And I'm like, I've never been on a motorcycle, I don't think, in my life. And I'm 23. All of a sudden, I'm being driven by a guy I can't speak the same language as, and he's driving me through the forest. And then we get on these dugout canoes, and we're going across this river that's rushing, that has crocodiles and hippos. We're going to one of the most remote and dangerous places in all the world, the hot spot for malaria. And we get out, we hike, and then, no joke, we're clearing thickets out of the way. I'm leading us behind a guide, and all of a sudden we hear drumming. And then all of a sudden we hear singing, very distinct, the same way the Pygmies sing. And we come into a clearing, and the first guy I meet has tuberculosis. And I can see his ribs, and he's coughing like crazy. And it is my vision. And Caleb and Colin, who knew it, I still had that piece of paper on me that said forgotten on top. They're grabbing my shoulders, and they're saying, Justin, this is your vision. This is your vision. I get weak in my knees. I go into a full squat.
Crazy.
I put my hands on my face, elbows on my knees, and I'm still weak, so much so that I have to take a knee. And I'm just observing everything I've already saw. And I think I needed that vision because if I didn't have it, I probably would have never gone back because of the suffering I saw, the insurmountable odds that were against them. And we had slave masters come to us, say, what are you here doing with my property? I own these people. These are my slaves. Or in another village, the Pygmies are seen as half man, half animal. They're seen as part monkey. They're looked down upon, spit upon, beaten, oftentimes. And they said, what are you here doing with my animals? I own these animals. And then when you talk to them, why don't you pay them in money, so that they can go buy their own food? They're like, in America, do you guys pay your animals or do you feed your animals? We feed our animals. And it's like, whoa, that kind of thought process, beat me up, tore apart my heart, ripped it open, and also showed me this is way bigger than me. This is a problem that the visual I got, not a vision, but just trying to relate it to something, was if I worked my whole life as hard as I could with as much love as I can, would it make a difference? Would I even notice? Or would it be like trying to empty the ocean with an eyedropper? And I remember telling Caleb that, if I took an eyedropper and started working on the ocean, would you ever notice? Would I ever notice?
Would it matter?
Yeah, would it matter?
A better question.
Yeah. Would it
And
matter?
that's a more
And
philosophical
that's what
question.
he said, where he goes, hey, every one of those drops represents a soul, represents a heart,
Mm-hmm.
represents a person, represents a face, represents a name. And he's like, it would matter. And then I got something that I really needed. I said, he goes, what are you going to do about this vision and these people? And I go, well, what am I supposed to? I can't do land. I can't do water. I can't do food. Like, they need their land rights. They need some water because they're dying. And they need some food that they farm for themselves because they can't hunt and gather like they used to because they're cutting down all the trees and makes the animals scared and skittish. So they run and they hide. And a lot of the stuff they used to naturally gather is gone, has been devastated, decimated. And, what am I supposed to do? And I go, but Kate, he goes, you got this vision. Because I said, I just need a little more confirmation. And he goes, more confirmation than you already got.
I need like a rainbow and then a lightning bolt at the same time.
I need the
flaming
clouds to
giraffe.
spread. Yes.
Yeah.
I need to hear the voice of God and see anyways, I need a galactic being to seriously converse with me.
A good UFO landing.
Yeah, right.
Fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Some of those Blu-ray guys or whatever. But I all of a sudden, the chief comes over to us after I'm saying that. Actually, we talked about it a little bit with Colin too. And Chief Jalua comes up, and Jalua says to me, I'm in the middle. Caleb and Colin are to my sides. And he looks right at me and says, everyone else calls us the forest people, but we call ourselves the forgotten. He uses the exact word that was in my vision. And they look at me, and I start tearing up. And he says, through a translator, he says, we don't have a voice. Can you help us have one? And whenever he said, can you help us have one? We don't have a voice. Can you help us have one? And he's looking again right at me. I start tearing up. I give him a hug, and I say yes, because I couldn't promise water wells. I couldn't promise buying land in their name. But like having a platform of some sort here through fighting, and not even that, being an American, having a free speech and not being enslaved, like I can help them have a voice. Anyone can. And so that was something that I said yes to, but I think my spirit, my soul, like my being, like screamed it with everything that I was. Like, yes, like now that I had this vision, even though I saw your suffering and I felt so defeated by it, and that's selfish, right? But like, I didn't know what I could do. And then, but him giving me the one tangible, the one practical thing that I could do, I was like, I can tell people y'all's story. And I came back and started doing that. I went back for another month and had a little boy die in my hands, which was awful, absolutely devastating. His name was Andy Bo. Not in my hands, like me caressing him, but I was cupping the back of his head. I was holding his little hand. And his mom had her hand on the back of my hand, and she had already lost her husband. She had already lost her other son. And now she was all alone. And the blood came out of his ears. And I just remember his hand going lifeless and, going out. And they had just named me Efeosa. Efeosa means the man who loves us. And I just thought, like, if I was going to be that man, or why did they even call me that? But if I was going to almost earn that, or if I was going to be that man, not earn it, but it was given as a gift. But if I was going to embody that, what would I do? And so I just found a shovel, started digging the grave, and we went out and got the casket. And it was just such a mind bender where, like, dude, it was $1 for the pills that would have cured him. It was
waterborne illness.
Yep. And it was $3.50 for the one shot cure. It was too late for the pills. But they don't get paid in money. And his mom was turned away, was rejected hospital treatment for her son, not once, but twice. The first time they said, you're too dirty to come in here. The second time they had begged, they had gotten a 120-pound bag of charcoal. They had gotten firewood. They had gotten chicken, one chicken, 2 dozen, or one or 2 dozen eggs. And they took all that, which was well over $3.50 of Congolese franc. And they took it to the base of the little clinic there. It's just a hut, but they said, you don't get it. We won't waste our medicine on a pygmy animal.
Wow.
And so the second trip, devastating, it was an incredible trip until the last 3 days. And then it was one of the most painful moments of my life, seeing a whole village, mourning, some of them falling on their face or back crying, not another. They were just saying, not another.
Yeah, it's just one of the hardest lives there is. Slavery, poverty, sickness, disempowered.
Yeah. Well, man, and then from there, I started sharing that story, and then people are like, we got to, not just me, but other people, like, we got to do something. And I'm like, yeah, we do, and we will. And so I started learning how to drill wells for myself, and then started teaching them how to drill wells, and then started I started even more like just nudges from the universe of like, this is what path you're supposed to be on. I needed $50,000 at least to go live there for a year and to drill a few wells. The first goal was to get them 30 acres of land and to drill 2 water wells. Now I say that, I kind of laugh now, because now it's been like 73 wells, over 3,000 acres of land, 4 sustainable farms, and now 1,651 people that have transitioned out of a life of slavery and into a life of freedom.
Yeah. Wow, man.
But I needed,
amazing.
Yeah, dude, just that's one of the biggest.
And that's Fight for the Forgotten.
Yeah, my organization that I got to so graciously be the founder of is Fight for the Forgotten. I'm the spokesperson and founder, and it's been an incredible journey where, it started with me, but now it's thousands of donors from around the world, all 50 states, 59 different countries. Joe helped me after he heard what I was doing, Joe Rogan, and and that was a little wink from God that I'm on the right path, where it was
it's a big wink.
Yeah. Well, I said we were buddies, but he said I said I need $50,000, and I told some people this, and 3 days after I tell him, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to get it. I don't got nothing, and I need to fight or something. And I'm like, but I don't feel called to fighting right now. I feel called to fighting for people. Like, that's what I want to do. That's what I need to do. Fighting against people, that's great, but cool. But fighting for people, like, that's what I was made for. That's what we were made for, all of us, like fighting for each other, and like contending for the highest possible good in every situation, every circumstance, every relationship. What Ram Dass said, the 30-minute meditation I did of yours before I came in here, was like, love everybody. That's what it was about. And what's so crazy is 3 days later, I don't think I've ever shared that. It's in my book. But 3 days later, I wake up and I'm on the Today Show, and it's the Pygmy kiddos. It's not even their kiddos. It's the oppressing tribe that we just say the Makapala, which means non-Pygmies, because I don't like. There's over 200 tribes in Congo, so I don't want to villainize one in the region. It's just their neighbors that do this to them, and man, all of a sudden I was on the Today Show with like me being the first white guy they'd ever seen. So they're petting my beard, my arm hair, and then all of a sudden Jimmy Kimmel saying, UFC fighter Justin Wren goes to Africa and he's petted like a golden retriever. And then I'm like, wow, this is getting a lot of momentum. I just threw up an Indiegogo link. Like, I want to go live there for a year. The plan's already in place. The people are in place. All we need is the equipment to do the work. And so, and some rice and beans. That's all we need. And so people started to support, and all of a sudden I was on TMZ. I was in good company. Right.
TMZ to the rescue. Yeah, yes.
First time I ever asked for donations was on TMZ. I was right after Lindsay Lohan and right before Honey Boo Boo. So, and then all of a sudden Joe reached out and said, we want you on the show, his podcast. And that was like 2012, I think.
Well, you've been on it a bunch, right?
Yeah, I've been on 8 times now. So I'm about to But he's like, look, before you go live there for a year, come tell your story why you're going. And I got to go on there and tell Andy Bo's story of like, like this little boy changed my life. And, they're standing on a battlefield of giants named typhoid, E. coli, cholera, waterborne disease, like whether it's intestinal bacteria or parasites or amoebas, like we've got to do something. And so that money came in basically overnight. It was wild. and I never experienced anything like that in my life. And so then it was like, let's do this, let's go. And I got there, and then I got malaria. I almost died my first month there. And I lost
Right.
33 pounds in 5 days. It was brutal. My veins were collapsing. They couldn't get any IVs in me, any medicine in me. I was vomiting it whenever I would take it. I was vomiting red and green, which was blood and bile. My ears sounded like a beehive was in them. What else?
You're just in an African hospital down there,
Mud
in
hut.
the jungle somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, it didn't even have a mattress. It was just it was metal, and it had like springs across it, like to keep a mattress on it. But I was on that, and then I just got off that. I'm like, I'm way too heavy for this thing. I was sinking in, and metal was going in my back. And we had my well drillers were there, my team of heroes. They're my heroes, right? Like, for me, a hero is just someone who sees the need and takes action. And there was this team that formed of like, we're going to do this. And they just wanted to put love and compassion in action. And so they slept with me around clock, like on the floor right next to me, watching me, getting the nurses and doctors in there. The nurses and doctors were fighting because it wasn't testing positive for malaria, although they believed, some of them, one believed I did. The other ones were like, no. What I found out was they were testing me with like outdated, expired stuff. And so I got evac'd to Uganda. I was pulled out of a plane. It was a pilot and me. I was pulled out of it into their makeshift ambulance there. And they took me to a hospital, and 65 to 70% of my bloodstream were parasites. I was almost in an irreversible coma. I had black water fever, which 1 in 2 people, I think if you Google it, it's 1 in 4 or 1 in 2 people, depending on what stat you look at, die that get it. And so
it's bad news.
It's bad news bears. And black water fever is where you, I didn't urinate for 5 full days. Whenever I finally did, it was like as black as our mics. It was like motor oil. It was sticky, and it was awful. It was scary.
Oh my God.
But then even there, it was like, if I didn't have that vision, if I didn't have that vision, and if I didn't have, what would I say, that experience with Handy Bow, if I didn't have that random, I mean, I had that thing up for like a year, that video on YouTube, a year. And then 3 days later, after saying I need $50,000, it goes viral and gets millions of views, and then $50,000 falls in my lap. Like, if it wasn't for all those things, I would have said, I would have had to go home. My family was saying, come home. They were saying, you're going to die. My well drilling team, a year later, after we had drilled our first 13 wells and seen over 2,000 acres given back in the name of the Pygmy people, like they said, when I had malaria, they thought I was going to tuck tail and run, that I was never going to come back to Africa ever again. And it's like, man, there was too much at play. Not me. There's just too much at work and too many undeniable reasons. And it's the person with, I say this in fighting, but it's the person with the most reasons that usually wins. And so for me and for Fight for the Forgotten, just way too many reasons were stacked up to like give up on this, to throw in the towel, to tap out, so to surrender. It's like, no, like maybe surrender in certain ways, like surrender to whatever's supposed to be, right? Like when I had malaria, I was like, if I go out dying, I know I'm supposed to be here. I was brought here. But if I don't, then it's exactly the way it was supposed to be. I'm supposed to understand what they go through. Like, this is a battle they fought many times. Some of them 7 times in their life. Now me 3 times. But like
3 times?
Yeah, 3 times malaria. 1 time cerebral malaria. So the parasite, not just in my liver and my blood, but in my brain. So we've had to poison my brain to kill the parasite in my brain. And I did that with Dr. Daniel Amen and some other doctors that really, really took my health. They gave me a new shot at life.
So do you feel that like some of the passion you put into when you were sober to doing this kind of work was like another kind of, it was like maybe the same fire in you. It was just displaced into something more altruistic. And then I'm just curious how that shifted then into more recent time where you had a relapse. Like, what changed or what shifted in your life that wasn't there for you anymore? That really strong purpose, whether it's the fighting or what the addiction is trying to cover up, or then like deep, deep purpose of working with the Pygmies?
Yeah. Well, thanks, man. That's a really great question. I would go to, I had the same fire even more to fight for people. And now when I fight in the cage, I've shifted my mantra and everything else. Like people are like, how do you fight and how do you hurt people? And I'm like, man, it's a competition first.
Yeah.
But it's a sport, but it's my platform and it's my voice. It's not even my voice, it's their voice now.
Yeah, your motivation is shifted.
Yeah, it's like when I get in there, I look at pictures. I'm back there listening to their music that we sing around the campfire or the fire, right? Where they took me to school and taught me about their culture. They called it Campfire University. It's where the Pygmies would take me to school and teach me their way of life. It's where they taught me 3 incredible Swahili proverbs, which is if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Or the second one, and that's all about tribe, right? That's what I found in me personally, fit for service with Aubrey and so many incredible people. But another Swahili proverb is, if you and me just talking about malaria, this will mean more hopefully now, but because it's tongue in cheek and it's funny. But now that was the biggest opponent of my life, being a mosquito. It's like, wow, like if you think you're too small to make a difference, try to sleep in a closed room with a mosquito. Right? Like if a mosquito can have that much of a difference, you and me, like if there was a mosquito in either one of our, or both of our rooms, we'd both be distracted. And a mosquito almost took me out more than, what's the biggest guy I fought? West Sim, 6'10", 265. I ended up beating him in a minute and a half, but he could have kicked my butt, but he would not have beaten me down as much as a mosquito did. Right? So if that mosquito can have that big of a difference in my life, how much more can you have in the difference of someone else, or make in someone else's life, right?
Drop of the ocean, as you said, the eyedropper.
Right?
Yeah.
And then another one, which would probably go along with the addiction, is if there is no opponent within, the enemy on the outside can do us no harm. And I love that one, especially coming out of treatment. When I was at treatment, I was thinking for 90 days, about day 30, I almost left. I almost quit and gave up and said, nah, this one isn't for me. Because I didn't go to a green smoothie place in Malibu or Scottsdale, like where they woke me up and gave me massages. I told my team and my board of directors, they were incredible. They said, we're not going to, we've been standing behind you, but now it's time for us to stand beside you and in front of you with a shield. And you need to take this time in treatment and take it as a gift, take it as an opportunity. Don't think of it as a punishment. And when I almost left, it was because I went to a big book boot camp. I went to a 12-step completion program. They kicked out more people than they kept. They talked down to us. They beat you down on your way in, kick you on your way out, beat you down the whole time you're there. And a lot of them needed it, and I needed it. And I'm so grateful for it. It was a gift, even though it was a struggle. Hardest thing I've ever done, probably, but the best thing I've ever done, because guys got sober that had been to 15 treatment centers because they were heroin addicts. This was the lost cause place, the last resort place, and I decided to go there first. At least
they're not doing like a boga therapy or anything like that, are they?
No, but it'd be great if they probably started doing that.
It might work.
It would work, and I believe, and most likely, and the Pygmies do a boga, and so, but that's I've never done it, but they can go in 24, 48, even 72-hour journeys.
Were you there for any of that?
No, it's pretty rare. Yeah, pretty rare. And oftentimes I was there with people who didn't approve. We always did things culturally sound. We never made them feel shame. I think for them, it was so, like if I went and I was just by myself with one of my really trusted friends, but whenever it was like the outside well drillers and things like that, they kept some things private. They invited me into a lot of it, but that journey was a rite of passage for their boys coming into manhood. And, but it was,
I'm guessing that's something you never had, was a rite of passage from boyhood into manhood, except you kind of made that for yourself in a way.
Yeah, I did. I guess for me, other boys might say, you step into manhood.
Maybe that's what addiction can be, maybe in some ways, destruction.
Mine was maybe fighting, I didn't have a dad that did that for me. maybe some guys say they're a man when you're 18 or when you can drink or when you can join the military or different stuff. Like we lost it a lot in our culture. Most boys don't get that. So for me, it was when I could be a pro fighter, when I get in there,
Yeah.
I'm a man now. And so, I did that at 19 and, but I don't know, like the thing that took me back into that deep, dark addiction was 2020, man. It's been hard for everybody. It was especially hard for me, and I'm not saying it's harder than anyone else's, but started the year off before COVID with getting a divorce. That was something I didn't see coming, and that we both know we needed. We both needed to heal individually, and so anyways, it was done in the most kind, gracious, loving way. Her family thanked me. I think my family thanked her.
Still crushing.
You don't get married to think you're ever going to get a divorce. So I felt like a failure, right? And I think I would have this performance wheel of like, like for me, that's a big failure. And I wanted to be one of the only ones in my family ever to like stay married, right? And not go through 2, 3, or 4 marriages. And someone I really wanted to help, I couldn't. And someone she really wanted to help, she couldn't. And so we went through counseling for 2 years. During counseling, we realized, in her first, but then me on board too, that a divorce was the healthiest thing for us. And so, still a hard pill to swallow. We were counseled on how to get a divorce. That's why it went so smooth and so great. And the silver lining. But for 6 months, we're counseled into how to do it the right way. And I think that process went really well, but COVID, I can't train. I'm divorced. I don't want to be at my place, get rid of my place. I'm isolated. I'm isolating. Now I'm wanting to numb out, sedate. I thought I could have one joint, and for other people, you can have a joint and that's no big deal. But for me, one hit turned into a spiral of I don't smoke weed like anybody else. It's every single inhale. I can smoke a pound in like 2 weeks.
Do you eat it? Would you eat edibles?
Everything possible.
Are you Joey Diaz level of like?
I'm gonna smoke an ounce. I'm gonna eat all the edibles. I'm gonna do the dabs. I'm gonna have everything, and I have my med card, so I'm getting the strongest thing possible. And so. Yeah, it just wasn't healthy, right? And so I spiral off into that. I end up admitting and confessing that I relapsed. They want to get me help. And just the place they chose at first, like I wasn't vibing with it. I knew it was the best place in Oklahoma, but I knew people that had had a sponsor with AA, and I knew people that were using heroin there. At that treatment, you get your cell phone, you get your computer every night. It's a 110-acre ranch. You can go to Walmart 2 times a week. You can meet your dealer. Your dealer can throw it over the fence. And what day of the week you're going to get your test every time. So I just like, that's not my place. And so, but they were pretty adamant I was going the next day. And it was just way too fast. I wanted to plan it out. I always try to surround myself with the best. And I was just like, no, there's got to be a better option. There's got to be a better way, a better place. But since I didn't have time, I ended up in Mexico. I decided instead of 6 a.m. being on a bus or a car to this other treatment center I didn't really have faith in, I decided to book a flight and end up in Cancun. Then I was headed down to Tulum. I thought I'd sit in some healing waters down there, but I stopped in Playa on the way. American soldier knew who I was, and him and I start hanging out. We get into some trouble and just some drugs, and then all of a sudden our dealer is finding out I'm a pro fighter and that he's a soldier, and then all of a sudden we're with some of the cartel on the top of a penthouse.
This is on your way to rehab?
Yeah,
essentially. Your detour.
Yeah, my detour was a big one, and with the cartel guys, it looked straight out of a movie, man. Like there's a waterfall up top, there's like a jungle up top, but there's an infinity pool that's looking over the ocean, and there's like, here's a police officer, he's like a corrupt guy, and here's the drug dealer, and
wow,
I'm like, wow. And so we bought some Oxy. Here's where the fentanyl might get in there, but I don't know it had any fentanyl in it. But I got Oxy 80s, a bunch of them. I mean, tons of them. And then I got...
That's a big pill.
It's a big pill. Normally they give 5 or 10 to people that get surgeries. That's what I was given, 5 and 10 and sometimes 20s. But I got a bunch of 80s. And then we felt like we scored, right? The addict mind, once it was set off, that trigger, that spree, it was like, here it is. This is what we were looking for. And then I got coke, a huge amount of cocaine, marijuana, what else?
Sounds like you got a bundle deal, like
I
more of
did.
a value pack.
It was a value pack for sure. And they were telling me, hey man, we're dealers, not stealers. Cause all of a sudden I said, do you guys happen to have Molly? And they started looking around and looking for MDMA. And all I had was ecstasy on the club scene. And I never had the pure stuff. So I was wanting to get the pure stuff. I'm like, if anyone's got it, these guys do, maybe. And this guy's balling.
Maybe. I don't know. Yeah.
So, but they give me something, and it was this crystal of sorts, and said, here it is. And I said, all right, I'm partially colorblind. I didn't know it was like pinkish reddish. Anyways, I take that, we go back, he's using, I'm using. And then I got in such a low, dark place. So did he. The love of his life that he saved up for bought this, $200,000 condo down there with a view. She says she's not coming. So he's in a deep, dark place. I'm in a deep, dark place. We separate. And then I'm like, hey, I need a couple days. In that couple days, I just decide I'm going to take 5 Oxy 80s, 5 of them.
At once?
At once. Snort them. And so I crushed them.
Sounds like you're going to kill yourself.
Yeah, I decided. Yeah, when I went down there, it was a one-way ticket. I wasn't really. I was open to coming back, but it was very. What would you call that? Not scripted, but it was very serendipitous. It just wasn't ironic. It was like it was supposed to be this. I need to find a better word, where it was 4 flight attendants, 2 pilots, and me. It was COVID. Nobody else was flying. I was like the last flight out of Oklahoma City. And it was like, yeah, I don't want to take many people on this journey with me, right? And so was in a very negative headspace. Once the addiction hit me, it resurfaced. It resurfaced with such force and such a grip that I just knew I wasn't going to escape it. That's where I was. At least I felt that. And for me, suicide, to describe it, is almost like, the only way, I've told a couple of people this, but it's like whenever I see the Twin Towers and they got hit by the planes, and the people above it, the people that are stuck in the smoke and the fire, and there's no way down. And they don't want to jump out of the building, but they have 2 options that they see. Here's stay in the burning building, suffocate and burn and die, which for me was my mind or this experience here on Earth. Or it was like, take the leap. And yeah, that is not a good option, but it's the better option. And so now I don't encourage that with anyone. It's now I see the veil's been lifted, where it's like, that's the most selfish act. And at least to me, I would have hurt so many people. I would have crushed my mom. I would have not been able to help the people that I've wanted to help for such a long time. Yeah, the Pygmies might not have known what had happened, but we started Fight for the Forgotten 2 years ago. We started bullying and suicide prevention. We had a girl come down and hand us her suicide letter and say, because you guys are here today, I'll be here tomorrow. We had another girl come crying, telling me that she just completed her suicide letter the class period before our assembly, where we shared our stories.
Whoa.
And it's like, wow, like we were supposed to be there. Like, this is part of my calling. This is part of my mission. And we've been able to impact over 100,000 students in schools, 22 million or something like that online last year. And it's like, man, like I was about to go down there, and I did. I guess to finish, like I did attempt suicide. 5 Oxy 80s equals 400 milligrams, right? Which is broken down into the 5 milligrams. That's 80. That's 80.
Yeah, that's just nuts. I mean,
yeah, that's almost 3%.
Seems like an overdose to me.
Yeah. Well, I took 5 Xanax, 2 milligrams with that, the strongest Xannies.
Yeah.
Then at least the strongest ones I've seen and had. And then I had about a Sharpie size, like at least a little Sharpie size, like thick mound of cocaine that numbed everything up. And I drank about half a bottle of tequila So this was
that's a Hellbop recipe for a
yeah,
whole group right
yeah.
there. That'll
Well,
take you down.
at treatment, they said there's no way I should be
I don't
here.
know how you survived.
So
I
that's what
mean,
they said. This is the only thing we can recollect. While everything was, how would I say that? While everything was coming to a close, getting dark and cold and numb, sound started to just kind of hum, and everything got darker. My mobility, my movement, like just my bodily function just slowed and were yeah, everything was heavy. Everything was hard. I just remembered that I asked for that Molly and that crystal. Like something whispered to me, take that. And so I did. I crushed it up and I snorted that in both nostrils, and it was the worst burn of my life. It was already numb from the coke, but this was the worst burn. It was like a chemical burn. It was awful. And I did this at about noon or 2 p.m. The next morning I woke up and to a gasp at 6 a.m. So this is like 16, 18 hours. What I found out at treatment was, and I went back and I asked the cartel guy, not the cartel guy, the big guy, but the one that brought us up there. I said, what was that crystal? Like, what was that I smashed up? And he goes, oh, you want some more of that? This was Ms. Molly, man. It was exactly what you asked for. I'm a dealer, not a stealer, bro. And I'm like, no. What was that? Like, I just knew it was something different. And he goes, oh, you want some more of that? You know? And I was like, well, maybe. Tell me what it was. And he goes, that's the strongest meth that we have here in Mexico. What I found out was it was red phosphorus methamphetamine. And so you can't even get that in the U.S. anymore. And that's the stuff that you use once and you can stay up for days or 6 days, 7 days. The guys at treatment that I was with, the one guy used to bring it up from Mexico. He was family with some of the cartel and had like something like 12 guys die that he knew, family. And he was like, yeah, bro, that stuff is the devil. That stuff will he used to do it, and he used to sleep, he said 2 to 4 nights a month on the red phosphorus stuff. This guy's in his 50s. And used to really
you snorted the whole line of it.
Yeah.
On top of everything else.
On top of everything else. And they say that's the only thing they can think of that kept my heart beating. And whenever I used something that should have kept me up for 5, 6 days or several days, all of a sudden I passed out for 16 hours, maybe 18, anywhere from noon to 2 p.m. to not waking up till a gasp at 6 a.m. the next morning. That's the only thing that could have saved my life. And
that was this year?
April 5th. April 5th, 2020. And on April 6th, I ended up going and getting in the ocean. I was in Playa del Carmen. Like I could have almost spit and hit the water. The beach was real small. And I put my feet in the sand, and that kind of helped ground me a little bit. And then I went and I got in the water. And I wasn't even in swim trunks. I just went and got in, threw my shirt off, got in. And I sat there. And I felt so much shame. And each wave that came over me was just like another wave of shame. Just shame. But there was a little bit of gratefulness, just a little bit. And it was almost like the waves, you know how they kind of come over you and then they can kind of leave? When it was leaving, it was almost like there's that gratefulness, just a little. And I started to connect with my breath. And I started thinking about the breath in my lungs. And I might have even started off saying that I'm so grateful for the breath in my lungs. That's the first time I said that was April 5th. The Pygmies pray that, by the way. They say, thank you. Thank you, God. Thank you, Creator. Thank you, Spirit. Thank you, ancestors, for the beating hearts in our chest. Thank you that today's a new day because many didn't wake up. Remember those that don't have food. Remember those without clean water. Remember those suffering. And now all of a sudden that became my prayer. I was like, thank you for the breath in my lungs. And I could feel the heart in my, like my heart beating. So it was probably the meth, right? So it was just pounding. And I was like, thank you for this beating heart in my chest. And then all of a sudden it was like it switched where instead of the gratefulness leaving and the shamefulness washing over me, it was like all of a sudden gratefulness just crashed over me. and with every wave. And then the shamefulness was just kind of leaving with everyone. Like a little bit more shame would leave and more gratefulness would come over me. And then a little bit more shamefulness would leave until I was just so freaking grateful just to be breathing, just to be alive. And then it was like something whispered to me, like a spirit, just open your eyes. Like, and when I did, like I didn't hear the whisper, but it was in my mind, open your eyes. And whenever I did, bro, I promise it was 2 seconds later, if that, the sun broke over the horizon. And I watched the most gorgeous sunrise ever on this earth to me.
Rebirth. Yeah.
Yeah, man. It happened right in front of me. And I just started thinking, wow, this happens every day, twice a day. Like the God of the cosmos, the one that breathed the stars into existence, the star breather that holds the universe in place and holds me in place. You know, he paints the sunrise and the sunset, this masterpiece, twice a day. You know, and it was like the darkest night of my life, but also the light, because the sun came up and I'm in the water still, these cool healing waters. Now all of a sudden there's this warmth on my face and on my shoulders and neck. And man, I cried. And it was a rebirth, without a shadow of a doubt. It was a rebirth. I even have a tattoo on my calf now that I got with Fit for Service, my first summit with them. And for me, man, you said, like, why did I get in such a dark place? I think why I was called to Fit for Service, and people don't, you know, they might not know what that is. It's Aubrey Marcus started this mastermind group, but it's much more than that. It's a tribe, and I heard you've been able to play for them, and
yeah, that was amazing last year.
Yeah, and for me, it's what got me hook, line, and sinker was just like, to be of service to this world, you must be fit for service. So to be of service, you must be fit for service, and that is on all cylinders. It's you can't just be a good humanitarian. You know, I can't just love people. I got to love myself. You know, I can't just. So they want us to be fit, and it's kind of part of the tribe, fit spiritually, relationally, like nutritionally, physically, you know, mentally, physically, spiritually, on all cylinders. Just got to be fit, or you're going to burn out, and you're not going to be everything you could be. And for me, I just had such a big crash and burn. I had given away, but I wouldn't give to me. I gave love away, but I wouldn't have received love. And that was that tattoo on my calf. It actually came from a second vision. I don't know if I have time for that, but a second vision happened to me completely sober, and it was in Sedona, and it was 10 years later. So at 13, I decided I wanted to attempt suicide, but I didn't, because I thought, what would this do to my mom? At 23, I did, 10 years later. And at 33, I really did, like for real. And at 23, I have the vision. And at 33, I have another vision. I kind of brought it all together. Pretty wild, man. I don't know. Like this last 6 months has been the best ever, especially those last 2 months. It's been wildly good.
That's so beautiful. I mean, it just seems like you keep cracking open. You know, 23 is a very powerful number. And going through all these different 10s too, it just seems like you could be in a really like interesting cycle of your life. I don't know if you've ever looked into like Vedic astrology, or if anyone's ever like told you like, I
don't know this stuff. Like it's all new to me. I mean, the vision happened 10 years ago, and some amazing adventures have happened, but it's like this unfolding that started to happen the last few months.
Wow. Well,
you got anything from you hit me with it. You can hit me with it later or now. I'm open.
I mean, we're always time rich, but you're very generous in your storytelling, which is your vulnerability and your generosity of just like embodying it. And so it's a gift to hear whatever you want to share. I mean, I'm always interested. A lot of people, I think if there's a glue on this show, it's kind of like how different people are walking their walk in this crazy show that we call incarnation, of just being alive. You know, it's like, and everyone kind of, we all sort of stumble through it, and you've had some big ones where you start to figure out what's working for you. It's sort of a methodology and sort of the maxims that you hold on to, or like your own laws of living, just through your own real felt experience. And I think that's powerful for other people to witness and to hear. Not to say like, hey, you need to do this. It's more just like it's the age old of telling the stories, and we pick up from it things that have meaning for us. And it lets us know that a guy like you that's been so successful and that's so physically strong and emotionally strong, what you go through and what you've been through. It's like, good God.
Yeah, man. The thing I've realized is that I'm really grateful for. That me, that you, that anyone I cross paths with, like we have survived 100% of our darkest days. We have. Like, it's, you know, and that the light, you know, light comes after the darkness, that the sun's going to rise again. And it's, and so for me, I now know, like, I'm here to stay. Oh, I didn't share, but whenever I saw that sunrise, it was like, I felt another whisper almost in my soul or spirit where it was like, you're not done yet. This is anyone listening to this, I think you're not done yet. But for me, I needed to hear that. Like, you're not done yet. This isn't your purpose. This, you know, this isn't your legacy, that you did start a bullying and suicide prevention thing, but then you succumb to it and you go and you give up, you throw in the towel, you run away. You were a coward. I'm not really, but for me, that's what it is. Not anyone else that's experienced that or lost someone to that, but for me, that's given up, and that's not the way I'm supposed to go out. And so, it woke me up for sure. And I have this tattoo on my leg, and it's I guess I didn't even know who it was, but it's called Bodhisattva. I saw the art, and I was just like, dude, that's dope. I don't know what that is, but I want that, and I want this over here. That's a sunrise. I was first going to get the sunrise, and I just felt called to the sunrise. And then I saw that guy, and I was like, yeah, that's me. That's me. And like, let's put him in between that sun and that ocean. Like, can we do that to the artist? And his name's Russ, and he's a fit for service guy, and he's out of North Carolina. Nashville. And then he didn't have the bandwidth to fix it all. Like, he didn't have his equipment. So all of a sudden I go to a guy named Alex Ruiz, and I didn't know really what he did, but I started telling him the story, and that I was going to get a tattoo. And then he goes, "Oh, you know, I'm an artist." I go, "Great. What kind of art do you do?" He goes, "Oh, have you ever heard of The Simpsons?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "I can draw you a mean Bart Simpson or Homer. What do you want?" And he's like, "I can merge these things."
Bodhisattva.
Yeah. So I showed it, and he started helping merge it together. And then another guy named Wyatt, and it was like three of these powerhouse dudes that meant a lot to me in Sedona worked together on my tattoo. And I was getting that tattooed on me, and I didn't even know the story, but for me, it was that moment, April 6th, me in the water, that rebirth. And then, maybe there's a listener that doesn't know the story, but Aubrey comes in, Aubrey Marcus, and he sees me getting that tattooed on me. He goes, and I had told Russ, this is me. And Russ, his dog, the tattoo artist, his dog was named Bodhi. And then all of a sudden, Aubrey comes in and goes, "That's you." And I go, "What do you mean that's me?" And he goes, "Yeah, he's the guy that was, I don't know who this is. I just felt called to it." And he goes, "Well, that's the guy that was going to," and you might be able to tell it better, but he said was going to reach enlightenment or the gates of heaven, but he looked back at the world and he had compassion for humanity and said, "I'm not coming in until I bring some more with me." And so
everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. And so whenever he said that, and I'm already got it halfway tattooed on me, I get chills, and I'm like, yeah. And so then that's when I get to tell Aubrey the story of April 5th and 6th. And he knew I was struggling, and I'd reached out to him and shared that with him, and he invited me in the tribe. And I don't know, maybe there's one person listening to this. Maybe it's supposed to be you. I don't know, man. But
I've hit those depths before. I mean, I know what that feels like. I've never taken
Oh, I
all
meant,
those.
sorry, I didn't mean you like that. You can share, but maybe someone's
Oh,
supposed to be in the tribe or apply or something. I don't know why I keep talking about fit for service, but yes, I didn't mean you being there in that dark of a place. I don't want to put that on you.
I
But what were
have.
you going to say? Oh, okay, cool.
Well,
I'm not
look, I feel like I know what some of those edges are like when you were talking about the fire that's burning, and or when you're in that space where there's no escape.
Hmm.
There's really only one escape. You feel like, and you're in that totally distorted place.
Hmm.
And I've felt that several times in my life. I mean, ironically, one of them was after 9/11.
Wow.
I was in New York, and everything fell apart in my life. And so I've had a few deep depressive moments in my life, from starting from childhood to adulthood. And so I know what that feels like, and it's like a monster. It's sort of this really inescapable feeling that's just horribleness of hopelessness.
Hmm.
And what's also hard is that sometimes in the system, like if you go to a doctor, they give you some like medications that can also kill you if you take enough of them.
Yeah.
And they tell you to take them for your anxiety. But I'm like, that was my plan to do it, was like just take more of them. So it was really fucked up, because it was like the thing that's supposed to be my medicine is also is like the gun.
Mm.
And it was really simple. It was like, well, you just take a few more, and you won't wake up.
I was on depression medication whenever all of a sudden I wanted to kill myself, right? This at 33. So got a divorce. They want to give me drugs.
Yep.
The drug side effects are suicidal ideation and suicide.
Yeah. It's a terrible cycle.
Yeah. I think a lot of times psychiatrists, and this was spoken to me by Dr. Daniel Amen, he's one of the most renowned psychiatrists there are. He studied more brains than anyone else in human history. Studied Muhammad Ali's brain, so many NFL players, and like 60 heads of state. He's got a 12-time New York Times bestseller, and he says it's malpractice that psychiatrists don't study the organ that they treat. Like would you let a heart surgeon or a cardiologist treat your heart without looking at the organ that they're treating and studying it and knowing how your heart looks? He says same thing with a psychiatrist. They should know how your brain looks and how it's functioning. And I was basically on red light drugs, which is like a no-go for my biology. And so he actually studies your brain, looks at imaging, all this other stuff, and he says 99% of psychiatric care is like that's practiced today is the same way they did Abraham Lincoln's diagnosis. And he goes, everything else is advanced, but psychiatry hasn't. And he's like, why? It's like we're doctors that are throwing darts in the dark. And these are like explosive darts that are human beings standing behind it. And we're like hoping we hit a bullseye. And he's like, but we're throwing it in the dark and we're not looking at it. And so that's who, I wasn't under the care of, and now I am under the care of. And so it's helped a lot.
It's really important, man. And one of the first doctors I saw when I was back in that time when I was in New York and I was really depressed, and he was supposedly one of the top doctors in New York, a psychiatrist, and he just kept pumping me full of different drugs. And he could not figure out why I was depressed. Like, he was looking for these sort of classical forms of trauma, and I didn't fit any of them. But for some reason, he just couldn't wrap his head around that, like, you just feel a malaise of just like this. None of this makes sense, like on a spiritual level to me, but to him, it's like, but I'm looking for the thing or the abuse or beyond the fact. The irony was that he kept going down to the 9/11, down to the epicenter to help people, and so he kept missing appointments because of that. And he became incredibly unreliable. And then he would just he gave me antipsychotics, he gave me all sorts of drugs, and I just got worse and worse and worse. Yeah, and it wasn't until I found more of like a cognitive behavioral therapist that I started to really get a grasp on what it means to your thinking and your lives. And that was well before any sort of spiritual journey anyway. Like, wow. When you're completely lost in your thoughts and your mind, it can be a terrible place to be, and no elders, no rite of passage, nothing to say like, what does the fire mean? How do we burn through it? I had none of that. And I think a lot of people don't.
Yeah. We need to get it back. We need to get back in touch with that. And even in new, innovative ways, I'm great with that too. But we got to bridge the gap. And honestly, that's what I think you're doing. Even in the 30-minute meditation I did with Ram Dass, again, I don't really know much about him at all. I've heard his name a few times, and the reason I heard it was because I did a soul wander in Sedona, and I kept coming across this same kind of sister in the tribe, and and we're not really supposed to talk. We're supposed to be on our own spiritual journey, and we just kept coming across each other over and over and over and over on our way back to Aubrey's home. And so finally we laughed. I would catch up with her. She'd catch up with me. We'd cross paths again. Finally we laughed, and I just put my hand out, and she reached her hand out, and we interlocked our fingers, and we walked each other home. And so anyways, I was sharing that story with someone in the breakdown. She was sharing it to my right, but I didn't know she was sitting there. And then the guy I was telling, he goes, "Have you ever heard Ram Dass say?" And then at the same exact time, she says, "It's like when Ram Dass says, we're all just trying to walk each other home." And I'm like, I'm probably going to have to look into this guy. And but anyways, you in that album, man, I was so touched by that. I've been listening to I Am Loving Awareness a lot. It's in my morning shower routine. And then before we were jumping on, I knew I wanted to listen to some more. Oh, and Grounded has helped me a lot. The song Grounded.
Oh, and cool.
Anyways, the miracle one. Anyways, what you're doing is bridging the gap. You're bringing that back into and spreading that and sharing that gift with the world, your own medicine, your own talents and skills and passion. That same passion I have to help people. That's how you're doing it through your art. And, man, I just appreciate you so much. So I'm glad you're doing it in the way that you are, and bringing it up to date and through your music and through your platform and channels.
Thanks, man. I mean, I'm also witnessing through Aubrey and you and some other people I've gotten to know in that ecosystem, and Kyle Kingsbury.
He's awesome.
There seems to also be this world of sort of bros and warriors who are also going through their waking up and spiritual awakenings. And it's great to see it. It really is.
Well, thank you, my man. Well, I really respect Kyle, Aubrey, all that gang. And last time I was with Kyle yesterday, and we were hugging. He hardly wears a shirt, but when he does, it's anyways, he was wearing the shirt that you're wearing now.
Oh yeah, I got this from Cal. Yeah. When I met Kyle for the first time, he was not wearing a shirt either. Shirts? Yeah.
The unlearned ones?
No, Kyle was not wearing a shirt. He was in Aubrey's gym when I met him. But Cal gave me this because he's a nice guy.
Cool. That's awesome.
The Unlearned podcast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Anyways, you're something else, man. This is a treat. This whole, I don't know. I know there's these different terms and vocabulary that I'm all catching on to, but this expansive or expansion, and I don't know, just this community has really helped open my mind, and my heart and my spirit, to a whole lot. And that's been a real gift to me. And it's been something that I've really truly needed for a long time, this community that I had and have whenever I am present in with the Batwa Pygmies in Uganda, the Mbuti Pygmies in Congo.
Yes.
The way that they depend on each other. Here we just want to be so independent, alone. I can do it by myself. And as a fighter growing up that way, I have to unlearn that, right? I don't have to be on my own. That whole, if you want to go fast, go alone. Sometimes you need to go fast and you just need to go get something done. But most of the time, we got to go together, because this life's it's a marathon, not a sprint. So.
Well, don't let anyone tell you that you're not, that you're ever on the outside or not part of any sort of club, because you're just as much as everybody else. You're a shining light, brother.
Thanks,
and
man.
Just keep doing what you're doing. And you're unbelievably generous in many ways. In just this little time I've gotten to know you, so just keep doing that. And I thank you so much for giving us all this time. We'd love to do it again sometime in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you. Hey, and I might start my own podcast, it looks like. So if I do, I
definitely should.
Hey, thank you. If I do, you're definitely, I'm going to ask you to be on.
You got it. You're a natural. Do it. I encourage you to do that.
Thank you.
Thanks, brother. Man, thank you, Justin. What a wonderful conversation. I really hope that you can come back, and I'm glad that I know you now. And thank you again for your openness and sharing your stories. It's so wonderful when people just give that way and give the gift of themselves and their story and share it with you. So, yeah, I'm sure you enjoyed that. And check out everything Justin. Check out the link in the show notes down there, and you can learn more and follow him. This song you're hearing in the background is called Hold On. It was recorded a long time ago. I actually used to have another podcast, and it's no longer up, but it was called Sound Healing Bites. I think it was back in 2010. I did it for about a year solid, and every week I'd put out a new music improvisation that I would just kind of record, and it was a sound healing bite. This was one of them, and I ended up re-recording this song called Hold On Again, which is on Orbits, I believe, the album. And yeah, a lot of people like this song, I suppose. To me, it was just sort of a moment in time. It was like a one-time little improvisation, but it's got a nice, sweet innocence about it, probably because it was very just sweet and innocent at the time, and very simple. And sometimes simple things are the best things. So you can check this out wherever you listen to music. Hey, thanks for subscribing. Thanks for reviewing. Thanks for being you and for being part of this community. I look forward to seeing you on Sundays at 12 p.m. Eastern on Instagram Live if you want to get into that conversation of the A's and Q's. Otherwise, stay tuned for all the other things, because we're, as Ram Dass says, walking each other home. But we're just walking, right? And sometimes it's really important when I pass another soul and we can look each other in the eye and just say, or feel, transmit, yeah, this is happening. Just this is happening, and I see you, and I see you. We're not ghosts. This is real, my friends, and it's a real dream. Ponder that. Keep walking your walk. Don't take any shit. But if you do it with grace.